We should be live, and hopefully, folks in the chat room, just let me know if you can hear and see me. Okay. All right, you can hear and see me. All right, I'm going to bring Michael in.
I'm here.
There he is, the man of the hour. How
No,
are you, Michael?
I'm fine. Thank you, Joe. How do you want this to go? I mean, I'm nervous and I've never
We,
done it publicly before, so
so we are live, and just I'll tell the story. I mean, when did we meet? Do you remember? Was it like 2 years ago, maybe?
about about that. Yeah.
Yeah. And if any chance during this, if you can get a light on you, you're really dark. If not, I could still see you. It's all
Okay.
right.
You grab that light there for
Yeah,
now.
any light on your face, that would help. So we met
Or
online. I don't remember exactly how we met, what we talked about,
hold on.
but
Nope, nope, nope. Turn that one off.
yeah, if you can bring it in the front.
One with the dimmer.
So we met. You told me your story. You shared the link to the story, and I was amazed. So yeah, that helps a lot. So just basically tell me your background, where you grew up, and we'll take it from there.
All
And
right.
don't be nervous because I'm already nervous. So
Well, the first thing I want to do is introduce Cindy. All right.
okay.
She's right here by my side. I'm just gonna I'm gonna take a roll.
Hi,
Hi,
Cindy.
everybody. So she's more nervous than I am, and she's kind of camera shy. So we'll go from there. I got I got three histories that I'd like to share tonight. One is my personal history, most of it. The second one would be my medical history, which I think will intrigue a lot of people. And the third thing would be my spiritual history. And the priest knows a lot about that. He knows a lot about all three of them. He heard my last confession, and I spilled my guts, and it was pretty wild. So I was born in northern New York. In fact, Friday will be my 61st birthday.
Early happy
Uh,
birthday.
thank you. Um, I had a pretty rough childhood. My father abandoned my family when I was 5. My mom committed suicide when I was 9. I ended up in foster care, and that was pretty rough. And a couple weeks after I turned 15 years old, I ran away from foster care, headed to Miami, and started working in the Merchant Marine in the Caribbean, Central and South America as an able-bodied seaman. I wanted to go to Europe, so I jumped a Greyhound and went to New York City. That's an interesting picture right there, Joe.
Yeah, we'll get to
Uh,
that. Sorry.
that's boot camp in Fort Dix, actually basic training. I'm actually 15 years old in that photograph. If you look at the top left-hand corner, that's Mike smirking right there because I thought I was a badass and I'd gotten over big. But the truth of it was, I just wanted to go to Europe and see more of the world. I'd already, I, I don't even know how to describe it. I just had this wanderlust, and I was free of the chains of foster care. I was on my own. Um, I never made it to high school. So if anybody wants to look up my yearbook picture, there isn't one. The first record.
How did you get in the army at 15?
Well, I one of the pictures that I sent you also has my older brother in it, and he was a few years older than I was, and I borrowed his birth certificate and his social security card, and stole an ID from that shop in the school where you buy your pencils and your paper and everything else, and I forged it, and that's how I went out on the road. And believe it or not, within 48 hours of my arriving in Miami, I had to use that fake ID. And I had signed a contract with the Army. They were going to send me to a weapons base in Germany, and I was pretty happy with it. I didn't realize that there was a background check that was naturally going to go with that. So Uh, the day after I graduated boot camp, I went to pick up my orders, and there were a couple of MPs standing in the first sergeant's office. And I walked in there, I looked at the MPs, and I went, I wonder if this is standard procedure. The first sergeant just sat there and smiled. He says, we don't know who you are, but we know who you're not, right? Because the fingerprints didn't add up. Long story short, I was a good soldier. And as time went by, they realized that I really had nothing to go back to. So they were hanging on to me, but it's tough to keep secrets in the barracks. I was passing out weapons in the armory, and next thing you know, they paid me and dropped me off at the gate, Wrightstown. And a few weeks later, I was back in Miami. And did sailing the seven seas thing for a few more years. And a good friend of mine, we talked about this privately. I had come back off a voyage from Trinidad and Tobago, Port of Spain. My girlfriend had died of a heroin overdose, and I ended up going to Albany, New York, and then re-enlisting in the Marines. I was 20 years old in that photograph there. I turned 21 on Paris Island.
You were a good-looking guy. I mean, you're still a good-looking guy, but it's a great picture.
I still have my rugged good looks. But
yeah, that's one of my favorite pictures you sent me.
You could tell the difference in my attitude, what 5 years difference will make. Like I said, I was a smartass at 15, and the Marine Corps kind of squeezed that smartass out of me. So I did a 4-year stint in the Marines, came out a non-commissioned officer, came back to the place of my birth, and set out to find a job. And it wasn't easy because this area up here is economically depressed. It always has been. I did a bunch of odd jobs for the next year and a half, and then I got picked up by the fire service. That was May 27th, 1987. I went to the fire academy at Montour Falls in New York State. I want to say that summer, 3-month academy, and we call it molding into the fold. I went back and started doing my job. Now, I had learned to scuba dive. Actually, the first time I'd ever scuba dived was in a place called St. Martin. It's in the Netherlands Antilles. And while I was in the Marine Corps, I certified for scuba, and I also certified for parachuting. And when I joined the fire service, I thought that the diving, we lived in a community of rivers and bridges. I thought that was a gift that I could make to my community. We people drown up here all the time. We have smugglers that punch through the ice. Kids. Oh, that was one of my specialties. I took a lot of different schools associated with the fire service. Things like high angle rope rescue, confined space rescue, swift water rescue, diving in included environments, hazardous materials, aircraft recovery, evidence recovery, just about everything you could think of. And when they put me out on a performance of duty disability, I retired out as a public safety diving supervisor. In the recreational field, I had my dive master, I had my master diver, and I was teaching dive rescue. So it was an interesting job. It was the best job I ever had and the worst job I ever had for, I'm sure you understand, all the right and wrong reasons.
So fast forward to July 26th, 1989.
July 26th, 1989. I was just coming off a night shift, and a ship navigating an international waterway struck the entrance wall coming into one of the locks up here and breached its hull and started spilling a chemical that is commonly used in paint stripper. It's extremely flammable. the vapor is heavier than air, so it um, floats over the ground and collects in shallow areas like ditches and things like that. And the truck that I took out was used to establish a half-mile perimeter around the spill. And for 16 hours, it's called an immediate danger to life and health. For 16 hours, from dawn until 16 hours later, whenever that was, I was just soaked in this cloud of evaporating chemical. I'd go to the cooler and wash my face, wet down my shirt, but there was no escaping the vapor. A couple days later, I mean, after the hull was
So
patched.
when that was going on, did you have any suspicions that this was not healthy? I mean, obviously you're in a situation like that, but were you thinking or just doing your job?
It's called an insult. Firefighters will understand that term. It's an insult to my entire body, my immune system, everything. And I really didn't pay any attention to it. Like everybody else, I just heaved a sigh of relief that the ship didn't blow up. It was carrying 15,000 metric tons of xylene, 15,000 metric tons of toluene, and 15,000 metric tons of tallow. Basically, all the ingredients you need for a bomb. And the temperature that day was in the mid to high 80s. And the only thing that kept that thing from blowing up was the temperature of the water, which was somewhere between 65, 66 degrees. Now, I didn't dive on that, but I spent 16 hours breathing it and being exposed to it. And about 2 days later, all of my exposed skin powdered, just turned white. I looked like Casper the Friendly Ghost. And for the next month or two, I had spontaneous nosebleeds I couldn't control. I'm going like, what the hell did I get into? And that was July 26th. That fall, we had some of our guys start to die off, guys that had been at the spill, and they had already had a lifetime of insults themselves. And we even had a name for it. It was called winter kill. And guys who were already sick or they just started dying on us. And
did you make the connection right away? I mean, did you make a connection to the spill and them dying, or no?
Boy, I'll tell you what, a lot of people did. But you just kind of go on. You move and you move forward, and you kind of put that stuff in the back of your head. And it wasn't until 2 years later, actually, it'll be 30 years on Friday. It was my birthday, if I remember so clearly. I woke up in a puddle of blood. A tumor the size of between a 50-cent piece and a quarter. It was pretty large. It had sloughed off during the night and bled unchecked. Painless. I didn't even know it was there. Got a scar, beautiful scar right here on my left shoulder. I'm not show and tell, but so I went to my doctor. My wife thought I'd been stabbed in my sleep, so I went to my family physician, got in that same day. He excised the tumor, what was left of it, and sewed me up and said, come back 10 days and get the stitches out. I went back 10 days later, and the tumor had reemerged right through the stitches. So he didn't bother taking the stitches out. He just took a bigger chunk. And he did a better look at me. He took a better look at me. He said, what the hell did you get into? When I took my shirt off, I had, I don't know, dozen and a half more tumors that I didn't even know were there. So he says, you need to see a specialist. There's a new one in Potsdam. And he sent me to him, and he's been my dermatologist for the past 30 years. He just retired this year. I was one of his first patients. And he watched what happened. He probably cut me, I don't know, I lost count. I stopped counting at 150 surgeries. Some were simple scoops. I've had Mohs surgery, skin grafts. I've had it all. I've taken over 700 stitches in the past 30 years, so that's a real thing. Now, after, I'd say about a year after that first tumor was removed, my employer started buying articles of medical device clothing for me to wear as part of my uniform. One of the most flammable fabrics in the world, and you got a fireman wearing them, part of his uniform. So that
So why did he bought it for the group, or he bought it for you specifically?
they bought it for me by within a year. I'd had, I don't know, maybe 30, 40 surgeries.
So
Uh,
it was to protect your skin, so you didn't irritate your skin.
yeah,
Is that what it was for?
I burned like an oil rag and
And we lost Michael. We had this problem earlier today, and it usually took him a couple. Oh, there he is.
through the course of my life. I mean, yeah, but for some reason, and that led into a couple of other things too. And I didn't really pay much attention to it, partly because you're familiar with the word denial, huh? Yeah. So,
Yes, yeah,
so
I can understand.
the Marine Corps gave me the greatest gift I've ever had from a military standpoint in my life. They gave me their motto, which is adapt, improvise, and overcome. And I loved my job.
We're losing you, Michael.
So I took it on the chin. I kept on doing. And can you still hear me?
Yeah, you're going in and out. Your signal. There's really nothing
Can
we
you
can
hear
do
me,
about it.
Joe?
Just yeah, I can hear you. We're losing you every now and then. He had issues earlier today, and we just lost him. So if we don't get Michael back in a couple of minutes, I will bring in our other guest in. We'll give him a couple of minutes. So yeah, I met Michael a couple of years ago, and I think most of you have read the story written by the priest's viewpoint, from his viewpoint, and that's what really, when I read that, it's just amazing. There's just so many details where I was like, this is amazing. This happened, and I know a lot of people don't know what this is, and hopefully we'll get Michael back soon. If not, we'll go to Plan B, and I'll go back to one other picture that he sent me when. This is actually not him. It's him at the top right. He's not rappelling there. And the next step is what happened as his health deteriorated. And I may go to Plan B right now, which I'm going to try to do. So, and Michael could pick it up. I'm going to bring in Father Demetrius and Moretas.
Close enough.
Glad you could be here. Michael is here, so I will add him in. I'm going to keep all of us in. Let's see if we can hear him. Michael? Yeah, he's still not back. So I will pick it up. How did you meet Michael? And when?
Sure. It was on November 11th, 2013. Having been a contracted Army chaplain, the American Legion in the town of Greenlawn reached out to me and asked me on several occasions, many years earlier, if I would offer their prayer during the Veterans Day parade, or a memorial service, I should say, on Veterans Day. And so I would do that every year. But on this particular year, and they had a wonderful custom of after the prayer, all those who have served were given a free meal at Applebee's, which is a really nice thing that they do. So everybody went to Applebee's to share in that meal. And it was then, for the first time, really, that I met Michael. The person in charge basically said, "Father Dimitry, I want you to meet Michael." And I noticed him from a distance, but I didn't have a conversation. He was a man with dark sunglasses and a walking stick. But when I went to meet him,
And that's the day you met. I know the day you met. This picture was taken. I don't know if you
right,
could see
and
that.
that is the area in Greenlawn, the little triangle there by Pulaski Road, where they have the Veterans Day prayer service.
And that's Long Island, New York. What part of Long Island?
That's in the town of Huntington, and the the village or the town, the city is Greenlawn, within the town of Huntington. I would exit 51 on the Long Island Expressway for those who are New Yorkers.
So yeah, so
Just
that's like an hour from New York City about.
yeah, just on the other side of the Nassau-Suffolk border, heading east towards the Hamptons, but not as rich.
Okay.
So it was there, and
Just one, Michael, are you here audio-wise? No. All right, keep going. Sorry.
all right, sure. So when I was introduced, I shook his hand, and it was something very weird. There we go. I hope he's
There he
there.
is.
Michael?
Hello, Padre. It's good to see you. I'm sorry I missed you in Long Island. Cindy and I, if I had known you were going to be there on Saturday, we would have been there with bells on.
It was a drive-by. I literally drove from New Hampshire down to do a wedding, and I drove right back. Michael, why don't you continue? I know that I was just talking about the day that I met you, but maybe you can go back and discuss some of the, when you lost your vision.
Well, the first episode where I lost my vision was in the year 2000. I had left the grocery store. My youngest daughter, was with me. And I was doing about 20, 25 miles an hour approaching an intersection. And I threw up all over myself. And my vision completely blurred out. And I wrapped the guy in front of me. And I got out, put it in park, got out. And I couldn't stand up. So my daughter gets out, and the guy at first, he thought maybe it was 10 o'clock in the morning. He's going like, I told him, I said, I think I'm having a medical episode or something. Long story short, I got home, got my daughter home, got my truck home, and I went and laid down, and the next day I felt fine. And then in 2000.
What year was that when that happened? The accident?
That was year 2000.
Okay.
One of the things that I noticed was I felt very, very nauseous, sick to my stomach in the detergent aisle, and I don't go to the detergent aisle anymore. I let Cindy go. So I have this still in the back of my mind, and I've had thousands of calls, and I've had thousands of insults to my immune system and everything else. So one of the things that they teach you at the fire academy is that there are some occupational risks associated with firefighting. Burning to death is the least of them. Cancer is a big one. Trust me, and there's a lot of guys who die from it. So I didn't, like I said, I was more scared than anything. I didn't want to focus on that episode. So I just, like I said, adapt, improvise, overcome. I went home, cleaned up, went and laid down, and the next day I felt fine. And that was in 2000. I met Cindy. I had lost my wife the year before. I was a single parent. I met Cindy. It was actually my 11-year-old daughter's idea to jump on the internet and join a dating club. She said I wasn't having any luck in the frozen produce section at P&C, so she helped me sign up, and that's where I met Cindy. And we had an 8-month over the phone on the internet romance, and then finally we agreed that she'd come and visit me and see how we got along. And I want to say that summer I had my second loss of vision. I was backing out of a friend's driveway and completely lost it. Again, my vision blurred completely out. And, got flushed, threw up, took out the head of his well, and put a nice dent in my truck. And Cindy drove us home. And it was, I want to say 2002. Cindy and I argue about this. It could have been 2003, but I think it was 2002. Cindy and I drove to Pennsylvania to meet up with an Army Ranger buddy of mine that I've known all my life. And we had to go to Oil City. We were in the vicinity in Franklin County, Cooperstown. So we took Charlotte, Cindy and I, and we drove to Oil City. And on the way back, I had another episode where, but this time I was doing 60 miles an hour, and I nearly killed Cindy and Charlotte in that moment. So she took the keys away from me. It was June, I want to say, of 2003, maybe. I was already out of work. The doctor disabled me, and the process was working. And I had to renew my driver's license. And I couldn't pass the eye test. So they sent me to a couple eye doctors. I was diagnosed with binasal hemianopsia, also known as left incongruous hemianopsia. And that's where this huge spot in your vision forms. You can see out the periphery of your eyes, and I got in the habit of doing this all the time, looking out the corner of my eye, because there was this like a mist or a fog or a cloud right in the center of my field of vision. And I'm ashamed to admit this, but I was putting other people's lives at risk by failing to acknowledge what I was terrified of, that I was going blind. In 2006, I want to say January of 2006, a tumor had grown right here on my right nasi, and it had intruded underneath my eye. I had general anesthesia to remove the tumor. They took a piece of my ear and sewed it to my face, and I had my whole side of my face was swollen right up. And I like to say that I'm the only guy I know that can touch my ear with my tongue, but I literally had a piece of my ear sewed to the side of my face. And the skin graft failed. So I ended up in Burlington, Vermont for what they call Mohs surgery. Now, bear in mind, aside from the actual operating room procedures, Cindy's been to every medical exam that I've ever been to, at least since I married her. And the surgery to close the wound took 70 stitches. And the surgery, the term they used was optic nerve ischemia, which is where the swelling, the discs inside my eyes were already swollen, which I'm getting ahead of myself here. I married Cindy the first day of fall in 2001. She'd kill me. You remember your wife's anniversary, your anniversary? Forget it one time. And I had 3 tumors blossom on my left hip. And Cindy was sick too. She ended up having her gallbladder out, and I ended up with a diagnosis of lymphoma from the biopsies from 2 of the tumors that they took off. They left the third one as a control, and that reabsorbed back into my body. And I asked the doctor, my family physician, to get a second opinion, to send the biopsies on to someone else a little bit higher up. And they did. They sent it to Buffalo Medical Group, and it came back with pseudolymphoma with atypical lymphocytic infiltrate. My doctor basically said, your immune system's been compromised, and every insult is only going to hasten the condition. And he told me, he said, put your affairs in order and approach the people you work for and let them know that you have a obligation to let them know that, one, you become sensitive to direct and reflected sunlight. That's why I started wearing sunglasses. 2, you can't see anything at night anymore. And 3, my color perception and depth perception had started to erode. So that was December. The doctor disabled me in March. I kept working. I was almost at the end of my career, and I'm going like, I can do this. I can make it to the finish line. And the guys at work were ready to cover me, but didn't work out that way.
Yeah, you didn't want to take. I mean, people are like, oh, he was just looking for disability. From what I know, that's the last thing you wanted.
Oh, I fought to keep my job for a while, at great expense, I might add. But I couldn't find a doctor who would give me a note to go back to work. In the fire department, you don't need a note to stay home sick. You need a note when you come back. It's called a fitness for duty certification. And no one would give me one. My own doctor wouldn't give me one. So I remember working Veterans Day that year. Cindy replaced the Marine Corps ring that I had buried. The first one I owned, I buried with my younger brother when I brought him home. And I remember working the Marine Corps birthday, which is November 10th, and November 11th, which obviously is Veterans Day. And I worked my 2 day shifts the following, we had a 4 days on, 4 days off schedule. And I remember going back to work for my 2 day shifts. And then my first night shift was where I got called on being night blind. Long story short, and coincidentally, that was November 18th of 2002. Now, I always thought my last day of work was Veterans Day, but when we look back through the records, actually November 18th. That's also the day that I ran away from foster care. It was November 18th, 1975. So, and I didn't put any of those things together. I'd never met the priest. I'd been to Long Island a couple times. Cindy literally grew up from St. Paraskevi. She literally grew up a block away.
And that's a
And
major,
she,
yeah, it's a major coincidence. And I know a lot of people do not know what St. Paraskevi is yet, which we'll get to. And I'm going to fast forward a little bit. When did it really get to the point, we're getting closer to you meeting Father Demetrius, and when did it really get to the point where, your eyesight was really waning?
the the Mohs surgery in Burlington took out my right eye completely. I was completely blind in my right eye, and I really got a wake up call in Dublin. Cindy and I had gone to Ireland, Dublin, on a trip. We also went to England and France, part of that. Two of our girls were in Spain at the time, and I had friends in England that I wanted to see. And there were a couple things, bucket list things that I wanted to do before I went completely blind. So I had a little bit of vision in my left eye over here on the left. And we were crossing the street in Dublin, and I know that they drive on the other side of the road in the opposite direction, but I wasn't really thinking. And I stepped out into the road. I looked to my left, and there wasn't anything coming. Of course, that was the wrong way to look. And the bus that clipped me literally took my hat and turned it this way. And if it hadn't been for Cindy reaching up and grabbing my collar and yanking me back onto the sidewalk, she'd have been coming home with me in a box. So that was a real wake-up call for me. And by fall of that year, that was April, by fall of 2006, I was completely blind. I had started training a service animal, I want to say a year and a half earlier, Maya. The priest had met that dog. The guys at the fire station pooled and chipped in and bought me a beautiful animal. I had trained the firehouse mascot previously. I used William Kohler's methods. He trained animals for the military, also trained them for Walt Disney, so I trusted his methods. And I was having problems with my balance as well, which was directly related to my deteriorating eyesight. And if it wasn't, Cindy literally taught me to walk again. It got to the point where I was falling all the time. And everybody thought we were madly in love because they'd see us out walking the streets or the story trail or whatnot, and we'd always be holding hands. And I'm madly in love with this woman, but that wasn't the reason why she was always holding my hand. And
What year was this picture taken?
when did we start doing that? That was that picture there. That picture there was
Yes.
taken the day that I rode with Father Dimitry to Calverton for a funeral. It was shortly after the event at St. Paraskevi.
Okay, so I'm going to take us to this day and tell us.
That's November 11th. The guy standing next to me, his name is Dominic. He lived 2 miles from us, and that would be our daily walk. We'd walk down and spend a couple of hours with Dominic. He's one of the highest decorated Air Force veterans. And it was a nice walk, and I'd spend an hour with the old guy, a little bit of company, give his caretaker a break, and then we would walk home.
And that's your first guide dog?
What's that?
That is Maya?
The Dalmatian is my first guide dog.
Okay.
The one behind me, that's Pima. She's laying over on the couch right there. What had happened prior to my meeting the priest, prior to Veterans Day, Maya had developed a limp. So I took her to the vet, and the vet said she's worn out her right ACL, hind ACL. She said I could do the surgery. I'm like, $5,000, but what she's going to do, she's going to offset on her left side. You worn her out. That dog literally walked thousands and thousands of miles with me in harness, kept me on my feet, and literally saved my life. Gave me something to live for. I had lost my driver's license a decade earlier, 2003. and they gave me a New York State ID card, and the dog really was my only freedom. That, I'm sorry. Oh, how I met the priest? Oh,
So
Cindy's
the
reminder.
dog does play a role in how you met.
No,
So tell that
oh,
story.
oh,
November
absolutely,
11th,
absolutely, and that's where I was going with
2013.
it. Is that the VA, they were getting ready to send me to a school for the blind in New Haven, Connecticut. I was learning Braille. I was using Dragon software for emails. And Cindy and I, the VA suggested we go to Dobbs Ferry in New York State and check out they train service animals, guide dogs for the blind. And we took a drive up there and put Maya through all her paces and put their best trained dog through its paces. And it was kind of a funny experience, the whole thing, because their best dog lost it when a squirrel came around the building. Maya just sat there. I said, "Stay." The other dog took off like a bat out of hell. So we decided to purchase an animal as a puppy and train her from there, and that's what Cindy and I did. What I wanted to do was there was a football field behind the nursery. I wanted to take and have Maya help me train my new dog. And Cindy and I argue about this. The message I got through the American Legion was they considered me a liability risk and a distraction to the students, because that's what I was doing. I was training my new service animal out on the
The high
football
school.
field at the high school, yeah. And when they kicked me off, I asked Cindy, I said, where else can I go to? I need to be able to train this animal to take Maya's place. And she said, well, there's the Greek church a block away. Maybe they'll let you use their backyard and parking lot. Maybe all we need to do is find out who the priest is there and ask them. The worst that they can say is no. So that was already on the schedule. But a couple other things were going on. Andrea got married at the Vanderbilt estate, and then we had the reception at Cindy's sister's house, and we discovered that her mom was sick, and that threw a wrench into everything. It really did. I mean, I had Cindy's mom longer than I had my own, and I loved her with all my heart, and she treated me like her own son, and I've seen so much death and destruction in my life, and everybody in my world, not just the little bit of family that I have, but my friends they were my family. I mean, Cindy's mom came and lived with us for a while, and she knew the struggle that I was going through. She's one of the few people who did, and so I had that on my heart as well. And when they threw me off the field, I was super angry. I was bitter, and I was pissed, and I wanted it to be over. I felt like a burden on everybody. I love Cindy's mom's dying, and I was the bus thing. That was the bus thing in Dublin was a seed in my head. You know, all you got to do, Mike, is 7 steps out. You're in the center of the bus, and boom. And I'd sit on a park bench directly across the street from the church and count the steps in my head, listen to them as they roared by. Every now and then, one would stop. You getting on? No, I'm not. Just chilling out. So I we had been down there for a while, and I had marched in the parade the year before with my dog and with my detachment, and I was contemplating suicide. Well, contemplating I was devising a plan to make it look like an accident. So I went to the prayer service at the park. That's the first time I ever saw Father D. And afterwards, took a few photographs with other members, and we went back to our apartment and dropped the animals off. And then Cindy brought me to Applebee's, where she found a spot for us out of the way. I sat down, and then I hear this man come up and ask Cindy. She actually changed seats for him so that he could sit next to me. And he reached over and he touched my hand, and there was like an electricity. You know, some people, you just get this incredible vibe off the person. And now let me tell you something about being blind. Okay, your other senses do kick in to compensate. You can feel changes in temperature. You can feel changes in proximity. People close to you, away from you. Your sense of smell picks up. Your sense of taste picks up. Touch. And when he took my hand, it was like some guy. Nobody had done that before. Nobody had ever said, "Hey, how you doing? I can see you're carrying a red."
And we'll have perfect time. Father Dimitry, take it from there.
No,
We'll
I
get him
saw.
back.
I see that you're wearing sunglasses and carrying a walking stick. My assumption is that you're blind. And he basically said, "Yeah." And then he asked me, "Are you the Greek priest?" I introduced myself, my father Dimitry. He goes, "Are you the Greek priest?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "I was going to stop by and talk to you at the church." And I go, "Really?" And he goes, "Yeah." I go, "Were you planning on coming to for the holy water?" And he goes, "What holy water?" I go, "For in our shrine." He goes, "What shrine?" And I said, "Saint Paraskevi, the patron saint of our church, is the patron saint for blind people or for people with eye problems." And so I just assumed, when he confirmed that he was blind, that he wanted to come and possibly do that. Uh, the shrine was established in 1969. Saint Paraskevi being the patron saint of the blind, and it's the only Saint Paraskevi Greek Orthodox church in the United States.
That's
So
amazing. So the only St. Paraskevi church in the United States, she's known for healing
healing blind.
vision, healing
Yes.
blind,
And the funny thing is, if you go to Greece, every village has the same Paraskevi. That's the odd thing. Like every village will have one church dedicated to that saint because she's so beloved, and a lot of miracles have happened there. So that's what the odd thing is. But nevertheless, what there's Michael. So we were just talking about how you asked if I was the priest, the Greek priest, and I said yes, and I mentioned something about the shrine and the holy water, and you were like, "What holy water?" That's when you told me, "No, no, no. I wanted to come and ask permission to walk my guide dog there. I'm training a new guide dog." And I said,
so you would think he made it to Greenlawn because that church is known for healing people. He had no idea. It's just a major coincidence he wound up at
None.
the only church in the United States where the saint known for healing eyesight was there. So sorry. Just want to make people know that.
there are too many coincidences. This July 26th today. Today's the feast day of Saint Paraskevi. It was on January 26th that he was exposed to that xylene
November
and began the
26th.
downturn to his eye health. No coincidences that we have here. It's amazing. But he asked me, and I said, of course, I'll let my parish council know so that when they see you walking, they're not going to ask, who is this person here? But I said, but when you come, please let me know so I can read some prayers over you.
And just he asked you if he can walk his dog at the church because the school had rejected him and said you're a liability, right? That's what happened.
Right. And I thought to myself, how could I say no to him? Not that I would, but I couldn't say no to him. I mean, of course. And then came the other question that night, because I gave him my card and he sent me an email, and the email said something like, confession is a wonderful
Ancient
thing,
discipline. No, it's an
ancient
ancient
discipline,
discipline,
and
and
it's
its
been
benefits
many
are well
years.
known.
Yeah, it's been many years since anyone has heard mine. I would have you hear mine. Would you? Now, for us as a Greek Orthodox priest, we're of course we're allowed to give sacraments to people who are Orthodox Christians, but a confession is a sacrament. So I thought to myself, how can I say no to him? He's already been rejected. I can't say that. Then I just thought to myself, you know what? I'll just wear my robe without the stole, and
I'm
I'll
going to
just
stop
hear
you
his.
right there. I'm just sorry, just so people know that's if you want to just talk over this, so just so we get the background on the church.
So yeah, so that's Saint Paraskevi. That's the icon of Saint Paraskevi. She's holding a cross because she's a martyr. And then do you see the eyes in the bowl? I mean, maybe I can tell you in a little bit as we tell the story, her life, because this is one of the reasons. That's the main entrance to the main church. There, those brass doors. In between the main church and the office and classroom building is a breezeway, and off the breezeway, so that this is again the main church. The ceiling is painted in the 7 days of creation, which is
Yeah.
just a unique
And I
painting.
just wanted to see people to see some of these pictures. Just amazing. It's beautiful. And another one. And these are the pictures you sent me right here.
Yeah, that's me in the altar.
And
This
you
was a wedding.
coming,
That's the wedding that Michael just missed me at. That was a few weeks ago.
and which we'll get to that in a
So that's
second.
the entrance into. So there's a stairwell that goes down into this underground chapel, and inside that chapel is where the shrine is, and
And I'm
where
going
the
to
whole
interrupt just because I interrupted you before. So just take us back. He said he would like a confession with you.
right. And so I talked within myself and I said, I can't say no to this man. Worst case scenario, I just won't wear my stole, so it won't be a quote unquote sacrament. Any Christian can hear the confession of another Christian. And then jokingly, I said to myself, he's blind. He can't tell whether I'm wearing it or not anyway. So I'll do that. And so my response to him was simply, of course, I'll hear your confession. So and then we had tried to find a day. In the meantime, he every day he was writing me emails, or every other day in the beginning before the 18th. We ended up meeting on the 18th, but I knew a couple of things. One, he was a person of great faith because he said to me, "I can't expect to have anything happen good to me unless I sort of clear my soul." Like he understood that if there was a physical healing to be done, that he needed to cleanse himself spiritually as well. And as I was reading that those emails, I said, I only got a chance to have a quick conversation with him. I didn't know the depth of his faith, but slowly and surely, I was embarrassed at the weakness of mine compared to the strength of his when he was sharing in his emails. And so we ended up that we decided on the 18th that he would come for that confession. Michael, do you want to go from there?
That's mostly true.
That's mostly true.
I we Cindy and I had a beautiful home, and we lived next to a Catholic church. I'm not Catholic. I was baptized in a small chapel in Camp Hansen, Okinawa, while I was in the Marines, only because I felt compelled to do that. I agreed to go and meet the priest, but I had, like he said, no expectation of anything happening. I wanted my heart to be clear in the event that I followed through with my original plan, which was to end my life prematurely. And I'm kind of embarrassed to admit that. And I went to the priest of that Catholic church that we lived next to, and I asked him to say a blessing for me and hear my confession. He did. He heard it, and that was years before I ever. But that was when I knew deep down inside I was going blind. And then while we were in Europe, we were in England. We went to Stonehenge, and then we went to Salisbury Cathedral, which is maybe 8 miles away from Stonehenge. And we arrived just in time for noon mass. And I just love being inside churches. I've been inside synagogues and mosques and just be surrounded by people of faith. I don't have any friends who aren't people of faith. And let me just say this. The First Amendment gives everybody to worship freely or not worship at all. That's a cornerstone of our country. So when we got to Salisbury, they were doing renovations, and they had put up just a few pews inside the church center, and then there were a lot of tourists. It's a tourist destination as well. And one of the people who maybe he was a priest or rector, I don't know. But I said we had come up to this huge fountain inside Salisbury Cathedral, and I washed my face with it, and I went and sat down, and the priest's name was McFarr, right? Father McFarr. And he was from Scotland. He's sitting up in this big crow's nest, a beautiful cathedral. The walls are they're like this gold brown because of all the incense from centuries. It has one of the last remaining, one of the 4 remaining copies of the Magna Carta, and I just wanted to hear it. And so he said it, and he talked about how we're all a community in the world, and I don't remember most of it, but at the end he says, and I'd like to close this Mass by saying a prayer that we all know, the Lord's Prayer. So everybody started, and he asked the people behind the red belt line, fence line there, to please respect the service and whatnot, and they did. So everybody, there was only like 30 or 40 of us sitting inside that perimeter. So I don't have any problem saying it. I have it's one of my favorite prayers. So I started saying it, and it was really funny because everybody jumped, because you got to think of this cathedral, and I kind of got a deep baritone voice, and it just echoed off the walls. Well, the priest stopped saying it. The people next to us stopped saying it, and I had the opportunity to say the Lord's Prayer in Salisbury Cathedral all by myself. And when I was done, the priest says, "Oh my God, what a beautiful, beautiful service this has been. And just for you weary wanderers, we want you to know that we're going to hold a special Mass for you right after this. We're going to bring in another priest, but we're going to hold a special Mass just for the travelers on their weary road." And he pointed right at Cindy and I. So we lingered after the service, and he did. And he saw my stick, and he prayed for me, and it was beautiful. And he's going like, I have a lot to face myself. But I guess Cindy's going to reach over and pop me here in a minute because I'm wandering.
So 2013, you're going in for confession. Take us through step by step what happened.
I really, I didn't know what to expect. Cindy grew up playing in the Grotto when she was babysitting, 10, 12 years old. She's over here snickering at me going like, this is so cool. But and when I went there, I'm going like, what? I'm already thinking, what are the odds? What are the possible odds of this? Here I meet a woman on the internet who lost her husband a year before to pancreatic cancer. I'm a single parent. She's a single parent. And my 11-year-old daughter hooks me up on UDate, which is now I think called Match.com. And I meet her and fall in love with her. And she lives next to a church for the blind. She didn't even know that. They always called it the Greek church. So, okay, it's the day I'm going, and the Padre is going to hear my confession, and I'm going to dump it all. Because I got a bus stop waiting for me.
That was your plan. So confess and then step in front of a bus. That's what you had in mind.
You know what? I always considered myself a spiritual person, but I wasn't particularly religious. In fact, I'm probably going to hell in every religion, not just Greek Orthodoxy. All right. But you know what? I was at that point, I was so desperate. My life had become so small. I had lost everything I had worked for, and everybody that I loved was disappearing in this darkness. And I really was. I was at the end of my rope. And then Cindy's mom was dying, and I had no expectation. So Cindy waited out in the Anna room in the breezeway, and I went in there, and I made my confession, and I spilled my guts. I spilled it all, and I just felt this huge, huge, huge weight lift off my shoulders. And it was over, and the priest helped me to my feet and brought me to that diamond that you see on the floor and had me kneel on it. And I'm thinking, at least my soul is as clean as I could possibly hope it to be. Anyway, he started praying over me, and I could feel his hand above my head. And most people can do this. If you hold your hands together, you can feel a radiant heat or an energy between them. But his hand was right here. He didn't touch me, and
So you're kneeling and he's standing.
I was kneeling, and he was standing to off my right shoulder, and something happened, and I just started sobbing. I mean, it was this beautiful rivulet of golden light that coursed out of the priest's hand above my head, came straight through my body, lingered a moment right here, and then went out the bottom of the soles of my feet.
Now you
And
felt something. You didn't see something. You felt something.
oh yeah, I felt it. Anyway, so the priest helps me to my feet. I open my eyes, and I'm going like, I'm still freaking blind. And he takes me out into the breezeway. Cindy's going like, what the heck just happened? I mean,
Now, Michael, I'm
he
going to
was
stop you because I want to just you. What did you feel?
love, the
But
most unconditional love I had ever experienced in my life. It was like, I can't even describe it. I mean, it was so overwhelming. I was sobbing. I wasn't crying. I was heaving. I was sobbing. I'm going like, oh my God, what just happened?
did you feel an
I
energy
kind of,
going through you? Am I
oh
remembering
yeah,
it? So
oh
just
yeah.
describe that. And if you need a break, we can have Father Dimitry, so you
No,
can
no,
tell
no,
us from
no,
your.
no, no. It was like waking up from a deep sleep and being wrapped in the most comfortable blanket, the most comfortable warmth that you've ever known, and just wanting to linger there forever because you feel safe and secure and loved and forgiven and all those other adjectives that go with. It was like, I don't know, what does an infant feel in its arms? I mean, it doesn't know anything but love. I had a lifetime of memories and mistakes and horror shows that I was just trying to figure out what part of me to let go. And when I was on my knees, I let it all go. I said, there's a greater power, there's a higher power at work here. What just happened to me? I didn't say anything to the priest in the moment. He just helped me to my feet and walked me out. And Cindy stood up, and we headed down into the grotto. And to be honest with you,
I didn't
Joe, I
say
had
anything to
no.
you either, Michael, because the truth is I was freaking out. I had never felt anything like that. I tried to explain it as it felt like a little tap on the top of my head while I had my hand over your head, and a sort of vibration that ran from the top of my head down my body. And the only thing that gave me a hint that it might have gone through to you as well was I felt your head shake a little bit, but it was so. I've never felt anything like that before or since. I felt a little bit here and there since, but nothing like that day. And so I didn't know how to respond to it because I was freaking out. I had no idea what it was. But I was already crying from hearing his confession. So I was already teary eyed throughout this whole process. And I lifted him up, and we just walked out the door where Sandy did see us, and Cindy helped Michael down the stairs into the shrine, that underground chapel with the water. And when we got there, I explained to Michael that there still is a beautiful 4-panel icon in on the wall in the shrine, and it just inside those doors to the right, and um, it explains how this young woman who lived in the late part of the second century. If you look at right, you can't see this just to the right of that picture,
She's right
but
above, right? Or is it
that's
off?
that's 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 where the holy water comes down. That's a mosaic on top that you
Okay.
see right there. But to the right of that, there's a 4-panel icon, and you see her. So she's a beautiful woman. A Christian, wanted to commit herself to Christ. The local ruler sees her and wants to make her one of his concubines, one of his many wives, and she refuses because she really wants to commit herself to Jesus, and because Christianity was an illegal religion, she's arrested. And so you see now the next panel that while she's arrested, she's tortured. And one of the ways she's tortured is she's put in a cauldron of boiling oil. So she's literally sitting in a cauldron of boiling oil. And for some reason, um, she's not being hurt by it. And the ruler, thinking that it wasn't hot enough, was screaming to his servants, "You fools! It's not hot enough." And Paraskevi dips her hand into the oil, and she goes, "It's hot enough," and she flicks it into his eyes, and immediately he's burnt and he's blind. And she says to him, "If you believe in my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, you'll be able to see again." And she touches his eyes, and he's able to see again. And immediately he tells his servants, "Get her out of there," and he becomes baptized. But the new ruler eventually comes, and her fame now is getting spreading. So he has her beheaded. And I'm
Can't
telling
hear
Michael that at that place where they beheaded her, in a town called Therapia, which is in modern day Turkey, um, they built a chapel.
it.
And sometime after that chapel was built, a spring came out of that, a natural spring of water, and people would come there and anoint themselves or drink the water from that shrine. And a lot of people, especially with eye problems, would be healed. So she became known over time as the patron saint for eye health in Eastern Christian tradition. Um, since this church, St. Paraskevi, was the only St. Paraskevi in the United States, a number of parishioners in the 60s decided to go to
Bouncing
that
around.
church in Asia Minor and get the blessing of the patriarch, the head of our church, and bring back some of that holy water. And so that's what they did. And they built this shrine, this underground shrine, and they have the holy water that was retrieved from the actual spring. And there's basically the Long Island water pours into the holy water, and then it overflows and comes out. So it's always constantly, and that little spout right there is where it comes out of. So it's always being sanctified. There you go. And so people come from all over the country to receive this water and to be prayed over, especially people with macular degeneration and detached retinas and other. Uh, the funny thing is, not very many people who are blind come to the shrine. And Michael has he shared with me his theory on that. Actually, people tend to give up, and his story is very, very, it sounds just like that. But so we even I've even gotten letters and phone calls from ophthalmologists who say, "I can't believe, what do you have in that water? My patient had X, Y, and Z, and how is it that their eyesight is back?" And we probably have hundreds of people who've written testimonies and people who've come back and let me know. Anyway, so here it is. I'm explaining to him that in 1969 we brought the water back. The water's flowing out of here. This is the holy water. I said a prayer for him. I anointed him with the holy water. And then I saw Michael. What I thought he was doing was, anointing his face with
No,
the water. But Michael, what were you doing at that point when you put your hands like a sink over that shrine, the water, and washed your face?
that was probably the longest walk I've ever taken from when you picked me up off the floor, and that walk to the grotto was probably the longest walk of my life. I had zero expectations. I didn't tell the priestess, right. All I was doing was washing the tears off my face, and while I was doing that, it was like looking through a kaleidoscope. I'm thinking, I'm going, what the hell? And I open my eyes and I look up, and
And
I
after you washed your eyes in the holy water, then you looked up.
and I'm thinking to myself, I'm having a stroke, because the hair on the back of I knew where the priest was. I knew where Cindy was. They were behind me to my right. My first, I have a problem with blurting. It's in one of Tony Robbins' books. I think it's chapter 7. I went, there's a woman here. And, I could feel this heat, this on my left side of my face and the back of my neck. So I turned, and it was like this, I don't know how to describe it, like a tornado of colors, the colors of the rainbow. And then they just slowed and then stopped. And then there's this beautiful woman, kind of got a Mediterranean complexion, standing there in this, I don't know, it was emerald, just this beautiful, beautiful emerald. And I didn't know this until later, but green is the middle color of the rainbow. It's also the one color that human beings can see the most shades of. And it's also my favorite color. just look at all the houses I painted. And I looked at her. She smiled at me, and then she kind of turned her head and towards the priest and Cindy. So I kept spinning. I saw Cindy, and I'm going like, I don't really. I'm going like I'm having a stroke, or was there something in that water? I don't know.
I mean,
And then
did you realize right away that nobody else could see her?
no, I
So
didn't.
you just thought it was somebody there.
I felt the temperature in the room go up. Okay, it was cool in there when we walked in. It was like maybe 60 degrees, but I felt a palpable rise in temperature, and I was so distracted in that moment. I was completely disoriented. I thought I was going to fall over. I looked at Cindy, and then I looked at the priest, and the first thing he did was he connected with my eyes, and I said, "Your eyes are green." And for the next several days, everybody that I looked into their eyes were green. It was, you know how you look into a bright light for a minute and then you look away in the dark and you have that spot in front of you? I'm going like, what's going on? I'm having a stroke, or I'm unconscious, and this is part of it. And no, it was kind of like all kinds of chaos erupted then, because I'm going like, I can see this. I could see this, I could see this, and touch me and tell me this is really happening. I had absolutely no expectation at all of that happening. And call me the faithless if you want, but that moment was so intense. I think about it every day. I think about it every morning.
It blew my mind, and I just remember the second priest, my assistant, came down to see what was going on, and then the secretary came down, and we were all basically crying. It was unbelievable, remarkable.
I left my blind man's cane in the grotto that day and walked home with Cindy.
It's still suspended there.
And I had to hold her hand because I was completely disoriented. You're talking to a guy who was counting steps and turns, and my whole world had collapsed into this dark hole. And all of a sudden, I'm like, I have vision back. It's not the same that I remember. It's, I don't know. There's something. Everything has a radiant shine to it, and I'd call it an aura. I don't even know how to describe it. It's like it was just like a flower blossoming, or I don't know. I'm still at a loss for words sometimes trying to describe it. And I'll tell you what, that was an interesting day. The next couple of weeks were really interesting because
the next morning I got to church.
I was still counting steps, and as we crossed the street over to we crossed the driveway of St. Paraskevi, I looked at that park bench, and I just felt this enormous sense of shame for ever having thought about that. And I went back the next day. I mean, that afternoon was really wild. I literally retreated into my cave because I was completely overwhelmed. All my senses had kicked in all at once, and I didn't know what was happening.
Michael, did you tell them at the time that you saw somebody that, I know, Father, you thought he was talking about the icon on the wall, and Michael, you were talking about you were seeing an actual person. Did you tell them at the time or did that come later?
That came later. I mean, I thought I had stroked out, and I was lying, intubated in a hospital room, and having some sort of dream. And I mean, there were I had a lot of interesting thoughts, and there were very, very few brief moments where I realized that I had regained my vision. And,
Father,
Harry.
Father, I just want to take 1 second. Just tell me exactly what you felt when that was going on. When you were listening to his confession, what exactly did it feel like that went through your body?
Well, it wasn't when I was hearing his confession. It was when he was kneeling, and I was reading the prayer of absolution over him. It was then, and like I said, the closest thing that I can explain it to you, it was a vibration. It was a warm, incredible. We get goosebumps, right? We get chills down our spine. This is that times 100. I'd never felt anything like that before. And the funny thing is, he didn't get his eyesight back then. Maybe he was spiritually healed then, and the spiritual healing came before the physical healing. I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking about the Gospels and thinking about how Jesus heals the paralytic. First, he forgives his sins, and then when people start saying, "Oh, what kind of authority does he have to heal those, a person's sins or forgive someone's sins?" And then he says, "Oh, let me show you what I could do." By the way, understand, I am not the author of any of this. Michael will say over and up and down, he's not the author of any of it. The way that I simply see it is that we were both at the same place and struck by a bolt of lightning. It was similar to that experience. We both, and I actually, I'm not going to get into it right now, but I had some struggles at that time. And the way the timing that everything happened, it was a reassurance to me that everything was okay. So everything worked out in a way that is beyond my understanding. I think beyond any human understanding. I knew that I was floating the rest of that day. I just could not believe, trying to pinch myself to see, did that really happen? And then when I showed up the next morning and my secretary says, "He's here." And I said, "Who's here?" "The man who was blind, but he's not blind anymore. He's here waiting for you in the church." And I walked in and he said, "Father, I never got a chance to see the big church. Remember the church with the pictures with all those, the 7-day creation there?" He goes, "Oh my goodness, this is incredibly beautiful. I've never seen anything like this." And then we proceeded to sit down and talk for 2 hours. And I remember the two questions he asked me. One was, "How can I say thank you?" And I said, "Don't thank me, thank God." And he goes, "How can I do that?" I go, "I don't know." Like, all I know is that when Jesus healed people, he would say, "Your faith has made you well, go and sin no more." I said, "That's all I can give you." And then the next question really broke my heart. And that question was, "How long will this last?" And I keep on thinking to myself, how long will this last? I don't know. Those are questions beyond my pay grade. I go, but I don't think God saves us from drowning just to drop us in deeper water. And that's all that I had for him. Um, and then every night, Michael would write me emails. And I had just written or edited my dissertation and published it. I love writing, but every night he would write me an email to talk about his experiences or talk about some aspect of the journey. And he wrote so eloquently that I would spend hours in trying to respond back to him, to give him the same care in my response as he used in his writing earlier in the day. And I think there's one. I have it, by the way. I have it in front of my hands.
I'm going
My
to pull
wife
it
did
up
print.
so people can
She
follow
printed it,
along.
but I'm going to read this because, and you don't have to put that up because I have it in front of me.
Okay,
But
I'll put it for the people watching.
so this is what he wrote to me, and what you have is some other things. But anyway, he wrote this on the 24th of November. Okay, so this is 6 days later.
Okay.
Father Demetrius, as one might expect, the past few days have been extraordinary, indescribably so. Cindy and I are having an ongoing conversation of incredulous seeing is believing disbelief, fueled by the events of these past few weeks, and most notably the past few days. To put it mildly, Father, both of us are somewhat overwhelmed. I'm not asking a question so much as I'm trying to ascertain where it is exactly I am in this unfolding situation. I don't know if you will be able to offer any insight at all as to the recollections or reflections of others who may have undergone a similar experience as the one I am currently in. But any observations you would have would be greatly appreciated. I don't know if I can accurately describe it or coherently state my situation, but I will make an honest attempt. I am discovering that there appears to be an intangible apogee and perigee to the wild swing of this strange pendulum on which I am now thoroughly suspended and wholly invested. To give you some idea of how completely disoriented I feel at this moment and how confusing it has become, let me share just a little of its nature with you. I would deeply appreciate any observations you may make or any impressions you may harvest in my sharing of it with you. I have talked about it at great length with Cindy, and she agrees you are probably the best candidate and perhaps the only person with any semblance of answers or an idea of direction of this undiscovered country I now find myself in. Simply put, in the moment, I do not know where I am in it, and I am completely and totally lost with regards to where it's heading. I feel as though I am being uncontrollably swept along an unfamiliar shore by a benign current I can neither control or anticipate. There is no feeling of immediacy or urgency to it, and I have found that all I need to do is close my eyes to retreat from it. But the overlapping juxtaposition of my senses is causing me enormous confusion and distraction. I am left to wonder if this is an altogether shared experience or is it unique to me. I did not know what make or color car my sister in law drove until yesterday. I am seeing people I have never seen before, speaking voices I have heard many times over, but never placed to a face. They are both familiar and unfamiliar to me. In the instant I connect the two, I could always feel the wind on my skin and hear the leaves rustling because of it. But now I see that invisible breeze move through the trees, and I feel it and see it move the branches as it does. The gentle and persistent assault upon the totality of my awareness is unnerving at times. Up till Monday, I had no perception of depth, and now it is all that I see in the rainbow of colors and the forgotten scales of structures and the textures of touch. The simplest step has become to me an unfolding, blossoming moment of discovery. Everything has a radiant shine to it, a subtle radiant shine to it. I have not seen my lovely bride's face clearly for over 10 years, and I have not seen it at all for over 7. She is more beautiful than I remember. I have finally seen the faces of my grandchildren for the first time since they were born. All I knew of them were their blurred embraces and the smiles in their voices. Can you help me to understand why and how completely lost I feel now? What once were vague impressions and ephemeral shadows have now become concrete and material objects with angles, points, and corners. I can now see every single thing that I stumbled over, that twisted an ankle, sprained a wrist, inflicted a bruise, or broken a bone. I could not be more helpless in my distractions. It is one of the strangest feelings I have ever had, where just days ago I was content to count steps and turns. Now I am overjoyed to count ceiling and floor tiles and telephone poles, sidewalk cracks, street lights, road signs. It is all beyond me, beyond any memory I may have held of them. I know some of this continual distraction should have been expected, but the sheer enormity of it is almost beyond belief. It is certainly outside the realm of any of my experiences in life. I find myself closing my eyes to do things I am so used to doing in the dark. When I open my eyes, I feel lost in the visual cornucopia of the sighted world, adrift in an uncharted ocean filled with images and feelings I had long ago given up as lost. I actually tie my shoes easier with my eyes closed than with them open. And that is just one example of the countless heart wrenching discoveries I've made. I hear myself saying to myself over and over again, so that is what it looks like. I have forgotten and abandoned so much to the darkness which was my world. It is not like forgetting how to ride a bicycle. I have no reference point by which a reasonable comparison can be made. All I really know, and am completely sure of, in the mystery of this moment, is that what has happened to me is a genuine and authentic miracle. I hear the law of parsimony echoing in my mind and realize that in all truth, all things being equal, the simplest explanation is usually the right one. It could not be more simple. And I have already experienced some suspicion that doubt entails. I've already been asked if it could not possibly be something far more complex of medical or scientific origin. Unbeknownst to me, my wife had our daughter follow me from a discreet distance yesterday for fear that I would end up laying in an injured heap somewhere along my daily walk. As I futilely try to explain what has happened to me, for me, to my closest friends and children, I find that little to no explanation is even possible. My son called me this morning at Cindy's request and implored me to see an optometrist and my cardiologist. He was fervently convinced that I have suffered some manner of stroke or other neurological blow, and that my repossessed sight, as unfamiliar as it currently is to me, is a telling symptom of some sort or indication that my vision has in fact taken a final turn for the worst. I readily and honestly admit a severe impairment of distraction, but my heart and spirit tells me this too will eventually pass. As I wait for the intensity of distraction to dissipate, I stand dumbfounded at the thousands of emerging unwilling compromises and concessions I made to the darkness of my world. This is where I am in this moment. This is the tip of an epic iceberg I cannot see and yet is impossible for me to describe. The dimensions of it are still beyond my grasp. Have I made any sense at all, Father? Because truly, my world has not been turned upside down, as your wife Flora suggested. A more accurate description is that it has in reality been turned inside out. Michael. Now, when he sent this to me, I was blown away only because he had said to me that he was that the depth of his vision was and I'm guessing Michael had said this to me, and you said it many times, Michael, that when someone loses one of their senses, all the other senses sort of become more acutely aware and sensitive. And so now the way that I try to explain it to people who ask me, and by the way, every time I share the story with someone, which is not as often as I used to, I feel a depth of love and the chills down my spine, and I feel like I'm there again, and it's an incredible feeling. But let me go back. So um, Michael had been developing a picture in his mind of what was in front of him by using all of his senses. Now that he had his vision, he could see what was there, but now he still got all that other extra um, um, stimuli from the other senses, and it took a while for him to be able to make everything right. Whenever someone asks me, I say, in the Bible we hear about people being healed who are blind, but we don't really know about what happened afterwards, their adjustment period. Here for the first time we sort of have an insight of what it's like for someone who could not see adjust to be able to have his vision back. But again, it wasn't just him seeing again. It was him being propelled on this beautiful spiritual journey, which he still is on. I mean, we had the blessing in 2019 for him to come and visit for a while with Cindy, and we rekindled that friendship. And it's funny how we can call each other out of nowhere exactly when we need each other. It's like a spiritual connection that I think we'll always have for all of eternity, as far as I'm concerned. Whatever happened that day will always connect us to each other spiritually for the rest of eternity.
Thank you so much for reading that. First of all, he's an amazing writer. I mean,
Yes.
when I first read that, I'm like, oh my god! I'm like, this guy is amazing. I'm like, I haven't read anything like this, and like, people have no idea. I posted some of it today on Twitter, and I'm like, people need to read this. Michael doesn't, he won't take credit for it, but he could be a professional writer, and so thank you for reading that. Any thoughts, Michael?
Um, I went to the church every day for 30 days afterwards. One to pray about. The priest doesn't know this, but that first night I was afraid to go to sleep. I was terrified of going to sleep because I was afraid that in the morning when I woke up, I'd be gone. I went to my first service there. And I asked the priest, I'm not Greek, I'm not Orthodox, I'm a Christian. And I met Flora, his wife, for the first time. And she said, can you really see again? And I turned to one of the stained glass windows to my left, and I said, those are the Beatitudes. That's the first thing my eyes fell upon. And I read them to her. And I said, yes, I can see. But what a lot of people don't know is that before I took him up on his offer, I was very angry. I spent my entire adult life in dedicated service to my nation, my community, my family, and I felt abandoned. I felt like I was being punished, and I felt unloved by my creator. So it was more than just a physical turnaround. There was a spiritual turnaround there as well, because all that anger just dissolved and slipped away. I still have one thing I do every night when I say my prayers when I'm ready to close my eyes. I have this little sliver of light that comes through my window, and I look at it one last time and I say, "Thank you for this day. Please let me see tomorrow." And my life is it's a ongoing realization of gratitude and love. And I asked the priest, I said, "Why me?" He didn't say what his response was. He said, "Why not you?" And I've kept that in my heart all these years, and I'm going like, "Why not you? Like, you're not a bad guy. I have all the flaws and character defects that everybody else has." So I was really disoriented for quite some time there, and it is intensely emotional for me. Intense. I can't even describe how intense. Um, all I have to do is think about it, and it literally brings me to tears thinking about it. Just like Father Dimitry said, I can't escape it. I don't want to escape it. It is without question one of the most profound uh, feelings of love that I've ever experienced in my life. And the first month, Cindy's mom died exactly 4 weeks later, and Father Dimitri came to her wake and blessed us, and then we realized that we had to make decisions about our world. I didn't have my driver's license at the time, and I was excited about the prospects of attempting to get it back. And everybody on my side is saying, "You need to go see the doctor. You need to go." Joe, you worked at the Northport VA. You know how big a facility it is, right?
Yeah, that was another coincidence. We both spent time in the Northport VA.
Yeah. And afterwards, St. Paraskevi had a homeless outreach. They did it with several other churches in the community, and they'd bring homeless guys in so they didn't freeze to death. Now we're talking December, and I'd go there looking for homeless veterans and see if I couldn't hook them up with benefits that the VA offered, and found a couple. And then the priest asked me if I'd like to go on a midnight run to New York City, where we pass out mittens and toiletries and things like that to the people in the Bowery living on the streets. And everything was so mesmerizing. The city lights. And I didn't know he had an ophthalmologist sitting next to me. But it was one of the I'm trying to
VA ophthalmologist.
Yeah. It wasn't the
Again,
guy I
these
saw.
coincidences just blow my mind, which I call God incidences. Anyway.
Yeah, it wasn't the guy I saw. So I did that, and I remember just the depth of gratitude that I felt. I had something to eat that day. I had someone to love me back. I had a warm place to sleep that night, and I felt like I had a new purpose for myself. Everything had been taken away. I lost everything I thought was of value, and kept everything. And I'm embarrassed to admit this too, that I didn't place as much importance on the things of real value in my life. I had a nice house, nice motorcycle, nice truck, a second home on the brook, and I had everything a man could want. And I had a beautiful woman sharing my bed. I had 5 beautiful kids. Cindy had 2 girls. I had 2 girls and a boy. And I had a beautiful family, and I had to lose it all. I eventually lost my motorcycle. After I lost my license, I fawned over it because I didn't want to let it go. And then one day I was out running it, and it fell over, pinned me on the ground. I thought I was going to burn to death in my garage. Well, it took Cindy a while to hear me screaming. But all those things, I've spent the past 7 years thinking about them, how unappreciative I was of the simple, important things in my life. I had to lose it all. And like I said, I felt like I was being punished. And I didn't feel like I deserved it. and I took it on the chin, and I adapted, I improvised, and I tried to overcome. But anyway, um, Cindy, I said, you got to take me to the DMV. So I told Father Dimitry I was going to see if I could get my driver's license back. Again, I hadn't had one in 10 years. So I went in there and I said, I'd like to reapply for my driver's license. I have a New York State ID card. And they looked me up and they said, we have you, you're legally blind. I wasn't legally blind. I was completely blind. And said, you've been to the doctor? I said, nope. Surgery? Nope. Let me get my supervisor. So she went and got her supervisor, and she said, we don't really have a policy for this. So you're going to have to provide something. I said, listen, the only thing I'm required to do is read what is called a Snellen chart on the wall. It begins with a big E on the top, I think, and then it gets progressively smaller. I said, I could read anything on that chart. The made in China thing on the bottom, that really small print. But here, let me do this. There's a break room 30 feet down the hall, and the lights are off. I can read the rules on the poster on the inside door of that wall. She said, "We're good. Let's get your picture taken and get you on your way." Well, in New York State, the only thing that you can wear as headgear in a DMV, a driver's license photograph, is a colander, and that's only if you happen to be a Pastafarian. And they were so frazzled that my driver's license actually has me wearing a cap that proudly says Marines across it. And Cindy goes, they don't do that. And of course, the next thing was to see a doctor, and I did. I was afraid. I was afraid of what he was going to tell me. And so Cindy and I, we kind of agreed, listen, we're going to go do this, right, because it needs to be done. And I did. And I didn't say anything to the doctor. I said, I'm here for an examination. And he examined me, and he said 4 words. He said, no change, keep moving. No change in condition, keep moving. And I walked out, and I didn't know what to tell Father Dimitry. Um, the damage to my optic nerves and the disc probably caused by the assault on my immune system. Because I remember it progressed from photosensitivity to losing my night vision, uh, my ability to distinguish between colors that were closely shaded, to optic nerve sclerosis, and then from there to binasal left incongruous hemianopsia, which that's the thing there, to optic nerve neuritis, to optic nerve neuropathy. And in that process, I had all the blood work done. I had the MRIs. The damage was established, and the prognosis wasn't good. Around about the same time, I had a VA doctor tell me, he said, Michael, you're going to have problems in your 50s and 60s. And I said, what do you mean? He knew about the exposures. I had multiple exposures, but that was the big one. That was definitively different than any others that I had experienced. And he said, I have good news and bad news for you. I said, what's the bad news? And he said, you probably won't know who you are when you get there. I went, what's the good news? He said, you probably won't know who you are when you get there. So, so it was a mixed bag, and it, I can't describe how humbled I'd been, and how ashamed and embarrassed I was for some of the things I thought of doing to myself. Um, I couldn't foresee a future for myself. We were living in a 156 square foot RV, and then we moved from that to take care of Cindy's mom into an upstairs apartment, and my world just kept getting smaller and smaller, and we lost everything along the way. And after Cindy's mom died, it was a matter of what do we do now? So I picked a small hamlet in the Adirondack Mountains, where my two of my grandchildren lived, and we moved here. We bought a 140-year-old farmhouse that was basically ready for a bulldozer, and we've been working on it for the past 7 years and turned it into a beautiful home. And we've had animals, different animals. We've carried different animals on the property. It used to be a farm. Now it has a beautiful garden in it, and it's home. And I will always, always, for the rest of my life, uh, make decisions and say my prayers with gratitude in my heart. I don't know. I don't know where else to go.
That's amazing. Thank you so much to both of you. We have questions. People in the chat room say they're all teary-eyed, but there are some questions if you guys want to try taking some interesting questions. I haven't looked at all of them, but we'll start out with Timmy E. I don't know if you could see that, Father. Please ask Father Dimitry if he had thought on the meaning of his not wearing his sacrament for confessions while being a part of this miracle. Like he's trying to say if that had anything to do, I think, with the miracle happening. If you had
Yeah,
thought
maybe
about that.
we can look at it in the way of saying that grace and the Holy Spirit transcends anything that we think limits it or is the conduit to that. So in the church, we're required when we're celebrating services to wear, our vestments and at least the stole. Um, but there's no magic in a stole. It's just part of our liturgical wear. I think the message here is that um, that miracles are not limited to any faith tradition or any specific order. If God wants something to happen, it'll happen in spite of you. And I used to say that it happened in spite of my sinfulness, but I thought after thinking about it a while, I think this miracle happened because of my sinfulness, and maybe as Michael shared, because of his sinfulness as well. It always seems in my life the greatest moments always come only after some of the darkest times, and I just have to weather the darkest times. Michael did, thank God, and I did, and we met each other at a point where we were just past all of that, and this was the validation that that we were living a life in grace.
He, Saint Paraskevi gave me my life back, and worked. God worked through this man here. If he had not reached over and taken my hand at Applebee's that day, I would not be sitting here talking to you.
I did nothing.
I mean, there was a confluence of the divine, the mystical, the inexplicable, but it was real and it was immediate, and it changed all of our lives in incredibly beautiful ways. And I was really good at pretending I wasn't blind, if that's what you're wondering, and I nearly killed my wife and niece because of that. And there was a lot of moments where, and it was incremental. It was like, okay, you get to lose this today, you get to lose this today, you get to lose this today, and I was growing more angry and more bitter by the hour, by the day. And one stranger's act of compassion and reaching out to a blind guy sitting in Applebee's looking for a free lunch changed not just my world, changed the lives of my children, my grandchildren, my friends, my family. And I know some of them are out there. I'll name a few names. Adrian. These are the shout outs I promised. Adrian, Lisa, Linda, Allison. These are people that I've shared my story with. I've shared my story with complete strangers. Georgia and her husband put us up that night, took us to the Nutcracker in Boston, took us to Vespers. And I shared our experience in a very private setting that was warm and inviting and welcoming and trusting and feel any concern about being judged or trolled or anything like that. And trust me, I've experienced all of that. But you know what? I'm the lucky one. So I'm the luckiest guy I know alive. I really am. I feel that way. I feel like I am the luckiest man on the planet. And and I've explained this to Father D, and I've explained this to you, Joe. I have no interest, zero interest in selling it. I'm okay. I'm up to my neck in uncompensated medical bills that I'll probably never be able to pay off the rest of my life. But that's okay. But I'm not selling this story. I don't want anybody. And I have exchanged gifts with other people on who I've had people travel almost 3,000 miles to come sit by our fire. But they wanted to hear the story for themselves, and some of them have sought out the priest, Father D, because there was a measure of doubt in their mind, but there's no doubt in mine, and I don't think there's any in Father D's either. And people are welcome to believe what they choose, and think what they want, and take from this what they will. And in a world growing darker by the day, a bright spot with a story of hope and blessing, I think it's only a good thing. I'm not looking for celebrity. You know how long you and I have been talking, Joe. And Father D, when is the first time I shared this publicly?
A year ago, something
Well,
like that. 2 years ago, not long ago. No, in fact, New York Newsday reached out to me and asked me if they could write an article about it, and I talked to Michael, and I didn't think it was a good idea. It wasn't. That's not the purpose of this. I think this is something that people have to seek out, just like in the way that Jesus spoke in parables, and you had to really be attentive to be able to get the message. I think that we don't want to draw attention to ourselves. It happened, and for those who really want to know more about it, let them seek it out. But we don't want to. No, I've compiled a 300-page book of our emails to each other and some sort of narrative, and we're holding on to it because we don't know what to do with it.
You should
But
publish it. I'm telling you, publish the book. I would love to read that. And it took me Michael. I mean, Michael and I had planned to do this as a. I would come in. I would do separate interviews with everybody involved, and then put together a package. And then COVID happened, and then he changed his mind, and then I had given up on because I know he's like, I don't really want to give up that privacy. And then recently he said, let's do it. So it's like I get a lot of flack from people. They're really angry that I'm not providing medical evidence, and I've seen some of the medical documents, and it's like, I'm not a doctor. And if you can listen to this story and the details that Michael has, and I've spoken with Cindy too, if you can believe this and think he's doing this for I don't know what reason. He's not looking for money. He's not mentally unstable. He's not coming up with stories. We have you. I mean, you were there. There were other people. So I thank both of you so much for sharing this. But it's an amazing story, and I hope more people later on will get to hear this on YouTube and other places, because it obviously had an effect on me, the fact that I wanted to do this when we first talked. So thank you, both of you, for sharing this.
I don't have a lot of ego left. That kind of went with my vision. That left with my vision. When you have somebody help you to the restroom, I mean, a lot of the things that I adapted, learned, they were going to teach me more in New Haven, Connecticut, and I was terrified of going alone because I couldn't bring Cindy with me. And like I said, I was learning Braille, and I was despondent. My doctor said, it's situational, Mike. It's understandable that you're moderately depressed and anxious about your life. Let's forget about the fact that you lost your home, sold your home, lost everything that didn't matter. And when Cindy and I, we had to make a decision about, we could have stayed in Long Island. We could still be there. But I had lost so much of my life. I wanted to go back and grow some beans and some tomatoes and drink a beer on the porch and watch the sunset. I mean, my life is simple today, but it's beautiful. And I have friends that are people of faith, and we transitioned between here, the English world, and the Amish community here, because I grew up with them. They helped me. They made sure I didn't go hungry when I was in foster care. And I speak a little bit of their Pennsylvania Deutsch, and they've made garments for Cindy and I to attend worship with them. And You don't know how many animals are named after Cindy. She has a degree in animal science from Farmingdale. She worked quarantine for the feds, and there are dogs named Cindy. There are ponies named Cindy. I mean, it's just it's a beautiful, and they know my story. They know what happened to me, and they don't go, I don't believe you. They go, glory be, all glory to God, and that's the spiritual aspect of my life. And I don't have a problem walking in any church anywhere and sitting down and saying a prayer to the higher power of God of my understanding. And this isn't about who Mike thinks God is. This isn't about religion. This is about an event that was so spiritual in nature that it wiped any shred of doubt from my heart. And I'll tell you what, it couldn't have been any closer to pulling the pin. Literally, I was sitting on the park bench, the bench on the sidewalk, waiting for a bus to go by. So that's where I'm at.
I do want to go through some questions. And Father, just tell me when
Yeah,
you need to
please.
go,
Yeah.
because Michael and I will keep going for a little bit longer. Tell me about the name that popped into your head related to the woman.
Are you asking me?
Yeah, and then Father
We were
Demetrius, you can.
actually Father Dimitry, I think, was mistaken on this. We were coming back from Calverton, and I didn't have a driver. I'm looking out the window, going like, "Oh my God, look at all this stuff!" Right? Same thing happened going to the Midnight Run in New York City. I was just mesmerized, and it just came out. It slipped out. I said, "Does Greek Orthodoxy have like Indian saints, something to that effect?" Because the name I kept hearing was, we have Saint Kateri up here in Akwesasne, and her Mohawk name is Petoaka. And I said, because that's the melody that I'm hearing in my ear. That's the word that like I said, I have a problem with blurred, and he just kind of, like I thought he was going to run off the side of the road because he's going like, what? I'm pretty sure that's where that discussion occurred, was on the trip back from Calverton Cemetery, and that's what I
Yeah, you
learned.
had said you when I asked you that, you said, I said, why do you ask that question? And you said, the woman in the shrine. I mean, that was the one comment that you made. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, I don't know. I was thinking about that woman, and this name is ringing into my ear. And you asked about that saint, and I said, I don't know if we have American Indian saint. I know we had the Aleutian, Alaskan saints, and then when you said the word Titiwaka, and I said, you said Tetatoko or something like that, and I said Theotokos. I said that's
Yeah, I don't speak
one.
Greek.
Yeah, I said that's one of the ways we refer to the Virgin Mary, that she's the God bearer, Theotokos, the God bearer. And so that's when really I understood that, because initially I thought he was pointing to this large icon of Saint Paraskevi when he said there's a woman in here. I thought that's what he first saw, and then that's when we kind of put two and two together. It's funny, we weren't like this was always an unfolding story. We were just living in grace, so we weren't looking to see what happened, how did it happen. Let's explain everything. It was more like, hey, da da da, and hey, da da da, and all of a sudden, like these pieces were just coming together, and that's when I said, Michael, that title is given to the Virgin Mary, and if you're referring to the woman that you saw in the shrine, and I thought it was Saint Paraskevi, it wasn't. It was probably the Virgin Mary, and I didn't see her. I didn't see what Michael saw when he first got his vision back, but so that's how we kind of came to that conclusion that it was probably the Virgin Mary that he saw.
I I didn't know anything about Marian visions until my experience, and then I trust me, I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what happened to me, and I've learned a great deal. So I've a lot more to learn. And I remember asking Father Dimitry not to bring that up again, because there's a natural association with people who see something that others can't see, and then the fact that I could see it all was a surprise to me. The fact that I still have my vision today, because every day is a redemption from that darkness, and it's not lost on me. None of it is. Any more questions, Joe? Now that every yes,
So I guess Anthony's asking, Michael, have you seen that saint, that person that you saw that day, or maybe some other saints since then?
I believe that I've seen what I saw in the grotto 2 more times. Once in my garden and once at Adirondack Medical Center in Saranac Lake. Cindy was with me the second time. I was alone. It was um, early in the morning. It was before sunrise. I'm an early riser on some days, and those are personal experiences that I really don't want to expound on. But the woman at Adirondack Medical Center was much older than the one I saw in the grotto. But she looked at me with the same glimmer in her eye. And I remember that woman in the grotto. Um, she was older. She needed help down the walkway. And I took her hand and walked her down. And when she got into her car, she looked at me and she gave me kind of one of those curious. It wasn't. There was nothing sinister about her. There was something comforting and warm and uh, like you're you're good. So I don't know. I chalk that up. It might be my own personal desire, but seen a couple other things too that defy explanation. And Cindy's seen a couple of them with me, and I attribute that to my regained vision. I see a lot more today than I think I saw before I lost it. I'm more attentive to details that other people that completely escape other people, and that's neither a gift nor a curse. It's just the way it is for me, and you know, I finally managed to break the habit. I live 124 steps away from a particular building here, and I count them just because I can. All right, but I mean, a lot has changed in my world, and I see God in nature. I mean, nature is my church. We have this beautiful trail. It took us a year to cut. The whole walk is about 2 miles long, and we see something every time we walk. It's something beautiful, something breathtaking, and it's always an experience of deep felt gratitude and just amazement. So, like I said, I don't go running around pulling people's shoulders and hey, guess what? I was blind for over 7 years, and now I can see that you know what you need to pull your dress out of your pantyhose because no one else is going to say anything to you because they like the view. All right, but I'm going to say something to you. Obvious stuff like that. And Cindy and I, we have a policy between us that whenever the moment unfolds where we see someone that needs help, we stop and we help and we go on about our way. I mean, I got to the point where the state police are giving me road flares because we end up at more accidents than they do. We were the first ones on they're dangerous roads up here between the deer and the snow and the ice and the black ice. And so we see opportunities where there's a choice to be made, a decision to be made. You know, one of the questions that I saw earlier on this was does something like what happened to me and Father Dimitry lend itself towards some sort of a community where people make conscious choices about things they're going to do and things. It's an involved conversation. I can honestly say that my life took a 180-degree turn when I walked out of St. Paraskevi on November 18th. You know, that's and all the coincidences. Cindy, we make notes about them and we forget them, but there are more than I can count. And that just tells me that there's a divine hand in my life, just like there's a divine hand in all of our lives. Some people are blind to them, and when I say some people are blind to them, I see miracles everywhere I look. You know, we have robins nesting on our porch. We have uh, uh, 4 bird feeders up, and we have literally hundreds of birds a day that when they're having their babies, they come and they take food. And Cindy's like filling it up every day. And watching those birds come back every year, that's a miracle to me. It's the simple stuff that we've just become so numb to. We don't appreciate that. I held my sixth grandchild in my arms 2 days ago. She was born on the 4th of July. That was a miracle. That I could hold her and I could see her and I could see her smile. I wept when I held my granddaughter for the first time because I never in my wildest dreams ever. I mean, there was one point where I'm going like, I just can't do this anymore. I just can't do it. I don't want to do it. So literally, that experience saved my life. And I'm a Marine, and I tell you what, you know what, you can make a decision, but you better follow through. And that it changed my world, changed Cindy's world, changed everybody's up here. Any other questions? I went for Father D.
You're muted.
What's that?
Joe's muted.
Thank you. You can. This is my nephew. Here's the question. You can both answer this. Does he think God took his sight because he couldn't see what actually mattered at the time when he lost it? Is that what he was saying a little earlier? Because he missed some of that. Either one of you can answer that one.
That's got to be Michael. He can only answer that.
You want me to answer it?
It's a question about how it's about your life, Michael. You have to answer that.
I'm not perfect. I wasn't before I lost my vision. I wasn't. I've done some things in my life. The priest knows those things because I shared them in my confession. I was completely honest about them. I've made a lot of poor decisions in my life. You want to talk about sins? I look at them as intentional errors. That's where you go, no, this isn't exactly right. You should be doing this. But you make a decision. Your ego talks you into it. You stop listening to that other guy on your shoulder. The other shoulder is going, don't do this. So for me, there was a reckoning for some of those decisions. I don't personally believe that the injury that I suffered in the burn, I think that was part of that was occupational hazard. I'm like I said, I'm not a particularly religious person. I think I know my scriptures pretty good, or at least as much as the average person does. In fact, I learned to speak Spanish with a Spanish Bible as my textbook. But I think I had gotten to a point of pride in my life where I thought I was invulnerable. And I thought I had made a lot of good choices, but I know in my heart that I'd made some poor ones. And that's one of the reasons why I felt like I was being punished. But I don't think God does that. I think we do that to ourselves. And so, no, I don't, I don't think God teaches us by punishing us. I think he teaches us by pointing our perception in a direction that we need to go. And it took me a long time to get there. I fell in love with a woman who literally grew up next door to that church. What are the odds of that? What are the odds of that? What, I got burned on a feast day of St. Paraskevi, July 26th. What are the odds of that? You know, I mean, there's too many coincidences. Those right there are the easiest ones I can point to, but there are a lot more. There are a lot more. And some people would look at that and go, oh, that's just coincidence. I look at that and I go, that's the universe speaking very loudly to you, Michael. You might do well to pay attention. Okay? And I was literally at the end of my road. I mean, when I got kicked off the football field, I was like, I don't even want to do this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. And, you know, when I got up here, the first year I trained Pima, and I don't know, where is she? She's running somewhere. But anyway, I trained her.
Yeah, people want to see Pima, so if she ever comes in again.
She's around here. So
don't worry about it.
But I trained her, and after I buried Maya in my backyard, I was still training Pima. I shared a couple pictures of her. And, you know, I'm a little embarrassed about that, too. Cindy's fetching Pima right now. Because that was, in my heart, that was doubt. Because, like I said, I was afraid to go to sleep for the longest time because I didn't know what I was facing when I woke up. And I put Pima in Maya's harness, and I trained her because I'm thinking I may need her tomorrow. And then I don't know when it was, maybe a year after that, I said, no, you're going to be my best friend, my best animal friend. And she is. She's really Cindy's dog now. But letting go of that fear was a big thing for me. And it was the fear of losing the light in my world. You know, and, come here, puppy. Come here. Come here.
Pima has been requested.
Yeah, there she is right there.
She's afraid of the thunder.
Yeah, it's thundering here, Joe.
Oh, I know that, and I know we're getting thunder, but I'm going to ask a question. My dog is scared. This one is for Father D. Do any of the churches recognize this as a miracle? What happened?
We I didn't present it to. I shared with my local bishop what happened, um, and we don't like jump onto things and say, "Oh, that's a miracle." You know, those things are vetted over time, and it's self-serving to say anything like that. So, like I said, the best way to say it, to describe it, is that we were just in a place, and yeah, there was some doubt. I remember after it happened, I went and asked some of the people in the American Legion in the Post about Michael. Who is he? Where did he come from? You know, I even though in my heart of hearts I knew, I kind of, and I shared that. I said to Michael in a moment of doubt, I said, I asked about you. Because people were asking me, are you sure? You sure he was blind? You sure? Da, 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 and all of that stuff. So, but I'll tell you that no, the church doesn't work that way, and certainly won't work that way with me, because I'm the last person, the last priest that most people would think would be involved in any miracle. So the community knows what happened, and we'll just leave it at that. It was just a moment in time where something out of the ordinary happened, and we can't explain it, but it was beautiful, and it was filled with grace.
And even to this day, it still is. There are people out there who question it, who doubt it. And I don't pay a lot of attention to those people because, number one, Cindy and I, my whole family, everybody knows who I am and where I came from. And there is an embarrassment of documentation. I just, honestly, I wouldn't know where to begin to look. I've seen 7 ophthalmologists. We were going through medical records here, and we have addresses and time frames. But number one, there's a lot of other medical associated with that. So in the thousands of pages of record, I sent you a few, Joe, where it specifically mentions optic nerve
Right.
sclerosis. I mean, you've seen more medical than anybody else is going to see. My medical information is personal and private to me, but I trust you. Cindy trusts you. I trust the priest. But I don't trust the trolls out there. Doctor, you're gonna look me up? Come on up. If you're invited, if you treat us kindly, you'll be welcome here. But if all you're gonna do, you know what, self care for me, part of my self care is not arguing with people who already have a preset idea about the way the argument's going to go. So to them, it's kind of like riding a motorcycle. You know, for the ones who do, no explanation is possible. And for the no, excuse me, for the ones who ride a motorcycle, no explanation is necessary. For the ones who don't ride, no explanation is possible. And I equate that with what happened to me. I don't go around telling people that, you know what, a little over 7 years ago, I was in a hurt locker. Because number one, some of them, their eyes glaze over and they go, what are you even talking about? But other people, if they have an open mind and an open heart, I'll tell anybody. I'll share it with anybody because for me, I'm beyond faith now. I know, and I don't know everything. I mean, I know what happened to me. Cindy knows what happened to me. She watched me go blind. My doctors watched me go blind. My children watched me go blind. And you know what? Like I said, I'm the luckiest guy on the planet. You know, and yeah, there's records out there, but you're going to have to spend effort and maybe money to find them. And what are you going to do with them when you do? Well, you're going to find the truth. Go ahead. Good luck to you, because that's all you're going to find, the truth. That's it.
Here's a question from Julie. You kind of answered that early, but the doctors, what are the doctors, have you even bothered to even go back to the doctors to ask them about your optic nerve at this point? For me, I wouldn't see the purpose if it was me.
2 things. Okay. When the pandemic started, I don't carry a phone, number one. I don't own one. All right. Cindy gets a call. It's from the Northport VA, Office of the Blind. All right. My last examination was in January of 2014. My eye exam, my last, and then I've just recently. I think it was when did I renew my driver's license?
When did you redo it?
Yeah, when did I renew it? It was just.
December 2013.
It was December. I got my driver's license back in December of 2013. So in December of this year, this last year, I had to go get my eyes examined, and I have the vision of a 61-year-old man. And okay, but the Office of the Blind calls me from the VA because they had the last report from my examination after St. Paraskevi, and the doctor, like I said, he had two comments: no change, keep moving. And I walked away because some of them, I mean, it's some people. I don't care if they believe me or not. I know what I have. I know what happened to me. And I know what happened to Father Dimitry in when I knelt and he prayed over me. That was something I have never experienced myself. And I was empty. I felt like I had been completely drained. And I had no hope. I was hopeless. I had given up all hope. And I was just going through the motions when I went down into the grotto. Coincidences be damned. I was just going through. I had no expectation of anything. I expected to go home, help Cindy take care of her mom. As it was, I carried her mom into the hospital. She was admitted that day. Her sister and the rest of her family went home to take and prepare her bedroom for hospice the next morning, but she died that night, holding my hand. I volunteered to stay behind, and it was one of the most beautiful nights of my life. I mean, watching my mother-in-law die was one of the most beautifully poignant moments. I mean, it was a gentle death, as peaceful as any I've ever seen, and I've seen a lot of it. Okay, I was on duty on 9/11. That's the day I asked Cindy to marry me. And I spent the next 6 months burying firemen. I buried over 200 guys. All right. And
Michael, what do you mean? Because I never. What does that mean? You buried over 200 guys. What did that consist of? I'm just curious.
it consisted of me driving to New York, sleeping at a firehouse, like Great Neck or Little Neck or wherever, and getting up in the morning and doing 2-3 funerals a day on my days off, and then the next day doing 2-3 funerals a day, and the next day doing 2-3 funerals a day. Cindy endorsed it 100%. I stayed at her sister's house a lot, and I'd be at a funeral in Staten Island one in the morning. I'd be at another one in Smithtown that afternoon, because we call the IAFF, we call the International after 9/11. And after the first week, it was recovery. It went from rescue to recovery. And all they needed were cranes and guys who worked iron and could cut iron. Everything. I mean, I've been to ground zero about 40 times, and everything was pulverized. There wasn't anything bigger than this. I mean, it was incredible. And the stench of decomposing bodies was also incredible. And they would find a firefighter because of the turnout gear. We lost 343 guys. One chaplain and 2 EMTs and a bunch of court officers. It was a horrible time. And we asked the international, what can we do to help? Because everybody volunteered. Every firefighter in America volunteered to go and work that pile. And they said, we need guys to fill in the holes at the funerals. And that's what I did. And I bring my dog back to my sister-in-law's house, the firehouse mascot, with her pelt was soaked in tears. And then finally I burned out. I did it for almost 6 months. I have a trunk full of 9/11 paraphernalia. I've been to ground zero, like, say, 40 times. And I knew I was sick. I mean, in December, I had those tumors removed, and I get kicked in the stomach by my doctor. I almost lost Cindy to gallbladder that went bad. And my life was real. I didn't know it at the time, but it was contorting in ways I couldn't even imagine. And I always walked away with a sense of gratitude, because I know what those men did. I know what they sacrificed, and their bravery humbles me to this day. And they saved a lot of lives. and I'm proud of that. I'm proud of that experience, and I'm proud that my new bride gave me permission to do it because she took the burden of my life when I left, taking care of my kids, her kids. I mean, I got pulled over a couple times. Troopers go, "Where are you going?" "Oh, you're a fireman. Where you headed?" I said, "I'm going to a funeral." And sometimes they'd find me sleeping on a pull off. And, tap, tap, tap. "What are you doing? You sleeping? You drunk?" "No, coming from a funeral." So, I mean, that's the brotherhood there. I belong to a brotherhood in the Marines. I belong to a brotherhood of firemen. And I'm proud of my service to my community, both from the diving perspective and the firefighting perspective. I have health issues, residual health issues from those days that I'm dealing with now, and they're consequential to my employment. I mean, nothing in my life is going to change except I wake up in the morning and I pray for the courage to make the right decisions. And
I'm
go ahead.
I'm gonna sorry to cut you off. I'm gonna end this with one final question for both of you, which is, what is your message for both of you? What is your message of hope to us here listening now? Michael first.
Who was the guy that did the neighborhood thing? What was his name? Years ago, it was 60s.
Mr. Rogers?
Mr. Rogers, yeah. You know what? He had 3 rules. The first rule was be kind. His second rule was be kind. His third rule was be kind. And you know what? We're given opportunities every day to be kind. And I'm here because of a stranger's kindness to a blind man sitting at Applebee's for a free lunch. That's the only reason why I'm talking to you tonight. I would be dead had it not been for that stranger reaching out to help another stranger, to touch another person's life. So I would say, when you're given a choice, a decision, you have to make a decision about being unkind or kind. Choose kindness. You will meet with success at every turn. That's not to say there aren't people out there who will mistake your kindness for weakness. That's only to say that you have it. You harvest the reward of that. And I like to believe that I am wealthier spiritually than the priest who touched my hand that day. I hope I'm mistaken, because I love the guy. Cindy loves him. He is a beloved friend, and that will never change. But he taught me something that day that I remember every day. That's my answer.
Well, let me just quickly say there's a lot of darkness in the world, and we can be discouraged and say that, what kind of difference can I make? And I brought back to that story of the young boy who's walking on the seashore, and he sees, a number of starfish on the shore, and an old man is looking at him and shaking his head and saying, "What is this kid doing?" And as he gets closer, the old man says, "What are you doing?" He goes, "I'm putting the starfish back into the ocean." He goes, "Look at it. There's thousands of starfish. What difference can you make?" And the young boy takes one more starfish and he throws it in the ocean. He said, "I made all the difference in the world for that one." And I think that we have to know that everything in our lives are not inconveniences, but opportunities to be of love and service to another human being. And I've never regretted taking chances and making sacrifices for another human being. I've always regretted acting selfish and saying, "I don't have the time," or "I can't do that." Or so I just err on the side of love and kindness, and it can produce so much beautiful fruit. And it has. And Michael's wrong. Michael might have gotten his eyesight back, his physical eyesight back, but I was given the blessing of having a spiritual eyesight I've never had before, and I'm grateful to that. And I gained a friend and a soulmate in him through this experience, and Cindy.
In this case, I am happy to be wrong.
Well, both of you, thank you so much. It's a great message. I appreciate you guys taking the time. We finally got to do this, and maybe sometime we'll do it again. Michael, I know we'll do more in the future. We'll stay in touch. And fathers, thank you so much. I know you're a
Glory be
busy
to God.
man, so yeah, I appreciate you taking the time to do
Oh,
this.
glory be to God. It's the least I could do, and hopefully it'll touch more people, and it'll be like a ripple. And that's
Thank you,
all we want.
Padre. Thank
Yeah,
you,
thank you.
Padre, for
Thank you,
joining us
Michael. I
tonight.
love you.
I
You be
love you
well.
back.
Love you,
I love you
Cindy.
back. Cindy, say good night. Uncle Vic.
All right.
Good
Good
night.
night,
All right.
Father.
Good night, Joe.
See ya.
Good night, Father D.
Good night, Michael and Cindy. We finally got to do it, Michael. And for folks still listening, I know we didn't get to every question. We got to a lot of questions. But we could do this again where all we do is take questions. And if people have more specific questions, I interrupted and tried to move you along. So we left out some details. I think we got most of them. One thing I want to do is just go through some of the pictures of your normal life that I did not get to do.
Yeah, I'll tell you what they are as you do.
Yeah, just real quick before we go. So yeah, go ahead.
I went from never being in a Greek church in my life to I've gotten a tour of a number of them. This was in Boston, and Cindy and I had an opportunity to attend Vespers at the seminary and light candles. We did the same thing at Notre Dame Cathedral in France. We went in there and said prayers, lit candles, and we didn't take this photograph. Georgia did. So this is Boston.
And what is that?
That's Faneuil Hall right there. I mean, if you look behind me, you'll see the piece of art that Bob Kennedy, who lives in Hyannis, did. That's Faneuil Hall in Boston. That the priest dropped us off there, and we caught the bus. We loved riding by train and by bus, so we took the bus to Boston and took the bus home, and it was a wonderful journey. This. That looks like an American Legion member with Father D. The day it could be. I didn't provide that photograph to you, or did I?
No, he sent that to me today late.
Yeah, that's me and the priest. I don't know what day that is though. Hey, there's a lot of pictures of me out there that I don't know about.
And that one.
That's Cindy choking me because I'm being stupid.
Nice beard.
Yeah.
Yeah, so people want to hear about other topics, but that will be on a separate show. We'll schedule something in the near future for other topics, and then
Yeah,
people
we'll
can
do
ask.
something.
I mean, there were some questions there that I would normally ask, but not tonight. Let's see what else we have picture-wise. Pima, right?
That's Pima. Cindy and I, we snowshoe in the wintertime for exercise. We walk in the summer, spring, summer, fall. It's something we love to do. We have to snowshoe a trail for the dog first, otherwise she's up to her snout, her muzzle in the snow. It gets pretty deep up here. That's just, again, that's a picture someone else took of us and gave to me.
When is that? When was that taken?
That was taken this winter.
And
it's
there's a message on the screen for you.
Tell him to come up to the Marine Corps League in Watertown, Washington?
Watertown, Mass.
Watertown.
Massachusetts.
I'm a life member of the Marine Corps League and the 1st Marine Division Association, Old Breed.
And
this is Marissa and Michael and me on a walk that we did, and we carried a little bit of alcohol with us when we got down to our halfway mark, and Marissa's drinking a beer with me. She's also the one that you saw in the graduation photograph from Cortland, 2012.
which I have there.
Yep, that one there. That's Maya, my first guide dog. And I was so proud of that girl. I got to do the father-daughter dance with her sister to pay honor to her father. He was a good man. And, of course, that's Cindy, the mom. And we gave all our kids as much education as they could stomach. And we've got some rocket scientists and some brain surgeons in our group. So, and that dog there was that's
Go ahead. What about the dog?
the most loyal creature I have ever known. Most loyal animal I've ever loved.
Yeah, you and I have similar feelings when it comes to animals and dogs.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
There you go.
That's me in a stupid moment. I don't know. We were getting ready for Beanstalk, which is kind of like a Woodstock without all the crazy stuff. And when Robin took this photograph, because she's the one who took it, Cindy didn't know that I had the rabbit ears up behind her head, and because I stand 14 inches taller than she does. I probably go 100 pounds more than she does. But it was a joyful moment. I was having a good time.
I think is one more. I think that's the last one.
That is my newest granddaughter, number 6. This is just 2 days ago. Her name is Michaela. She was born on the 4th of July, just as the finale of the fireworks started. It was a wonderful moment. My oldest daughter's second child. And this is part of the grace that I've been given, to live and to see and to love and to teach my grandchildren.
And I think that's it. Let me get out of that for a second.
We're real people, Joe.
That's why I
Okay.
wanted to show those pictures.
You know, we had to listen. My water heater blew up last night in the middle of the night. You know, Cindy and I took cold showers today. My lawnmower's in the shop. I'm ready to mow my yard instead of mow it. So we have all the challenges that everybody else has. You know, we have a house to take care of, a yard to keep up. We have a garden that we have to harvest. Last year we gave 3 tons of food away. We grow it to give it away because we can't eat it all.
What do you do on Wednesday mornings?
We deliver Meals on Wheels to shut-ins up here. It's an important part of our weekly routine. It's our small way of giving back to our community. And I do the honor detail for the American Legion, putting guys in the ground, giving them the last measure of respect they deserve. And I'm humbled by that privilege. And I used to rake the beach, but they put new sand down, and I don't need to do that anymore. And
Last 2 pictures.
that's my one of my grandsons right there. We're heading out. It's about a 2-mile walk, and we got about I want to say 18 inches of snow that night. But yeah.
Last one. There he is without the beard. You could see the real man.
Yeah, that's Scarlett. She's was my youngest granddaughter, and that's me without the beard. I had a doctor's appointment where he asked me to shave it off so he could check out my scars and see if there were anything else growing on my face. I've had a lot of surgery on my face. So.
You look good.
Thank you.
I'll just add a couple more questions. Have you found purpose, or are you still searching?
That's a good question. You know what? I've always said there's 5 things a person needs to be happy. I've had something to eat today. I've got somewhere warm and dry to sleep tonight. I've got someone to love and someone to love me back. And if the only purpose I have in my life now is to teach my grandchildren how to play guitar, or do the Meals on Wheels thing, or be a honest, dependable member of my community, then that's my purpose. I've raised my family. I had a career. I've done a lot of things in my life that I'm actually proud of. I've done a few sketchy things that I'm not going to brag about or talk about, but I think being a contributing member to society is an important thing to do, and it's all about, like I said, decisions. So, yeah, I think I have purpose and meaning. If nothing else, to share my faith with my grandchildren, like my grandfather shared his faith with me, gave me something to believe in, a direction for my road. And you know where I came from. It was not easy. It was. I do. Not.
Yeah, one day, if you ever want to talk about that, we can.
We can.
Here's something somebody had asked earlier. What's the placard with Asian characters behind Michael? Any significance as far as it relates to his spirituality?
That is a gift from a woman named Gretchen, who sent it from actually California on her way to China to become an English teacher. She was my younger brother's great love in life, and he died while she was en route to California. So she sent that to me. There's a blessing on the back in English, but that's all I have from Gretchen. I kept it.
Sorry, I put up a question by accident. Somebody had a marine comment, but I can't find it. It was just Shout out. Here we go. Last one.
Semper Fidelis, and thank you for sharing. Semper Fi.
Yeah,
Semper
thank
Fi.
you. Thank you to both of you. We'll definitely do this again, and we can talk about whatever next time, whatever people want to talk about. Anything, because you have lots to say about a lot of things.
Let me explain something to you, Joe. The 6 years that I spent in Florida, Miami, pretty much it was 6 years. It was over 10 years before I made it back to the place of my birth. I didn't watch the TV. I never got a piece of mail. Uh, every library that I came across, I would sit in. A lot of times I'd take refuge from the weather, and I have a very wide range of. I've read a lot of things. You're talking to a guy who has an eighth grade education, scored the second highest on the ASVAB in Fort Hamilton, New York, out of almost 200 guys who were taking it. I'm not saying I'm smart. I'm just saying that um, my education isn't conventional. So, and a lot of my reading had to do with search for answers to why all the crappy crap happened to me in my life. Like every other human being, you search for identity and reason to the misery that inflicted on you or you stumble upon. That and I've always been a searcher in that respect, and I will continue to search probably as long as I don't think the search ever stops. And I think an open mind is important. I think patience and charity is important. And the charity, if because I know there's going to be people out there, he's going to attribute this. I showed you some of the troll material already. And I just don't have the energy or the time to argue with people like that. They can either accept my experience as having happened, or they can, whatever. I don't have time or energy to argue with those people. I'd rather talk to someone who is interested in digging just a little bit deeper into it, because what happened to me was real, and it changed my life forever.
And how many languages do you speak?
So. Let me put it this way: languages are a perishable skill. The only one that I'm really good at right now is sarcasm. I speak the language of sarcasm. Let me say this: we have H2A workers up here. Okay, they're typically Mexican or Guatemalan. I speak fluent Spanish. It's one of the few languages that it's one of the Romance languages. I can get to the bathroom and a bunch of others. Am I fluent in them? To the point where I can express myself, make myself known. Um, but English is the one that I'm best in. Mon français c'est mauvais. My French is very poor. And and on a clear night, I could see the lights of Montreal from the end of our driveway.
Oh yeah, I did not know that. It was my first road trip ever. Was in Montreal.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I pull it out. I spoke more Spanish in Ireland. I spoke Portuguese in France. It was Portuguese in France, and a couple others in England. I mean, English though is the language of this world. I mean, you talk to a captain on a ship, he's probably going to be able to speak a little bit of English. He might be Chinese, but he's going to be able to speak English to the, port control, air, air controllers. English is the language of this world, the predominant language of this world. I hope that answers you. I'd
It
fumble myself.
does. Yeah, it does. And I'm going to let you guys go. I'm going to go eat dinner. I'm going to thank you again, and we'll
Joe,
stay in touch. Yeah, it was great. It exceeded my expectations, and it was great seeing you guys together, interacting together, and sharing that story. Amazing story. And
Yeah, it
we'll
was
do it.
really good to see the priest. Cindy and I missed him by a day in Long Island when we were down there, and all of us had misgivings about doing this. Partly because I'm not into spectacle, and I'm not looking for anything. I just wanted to share our story because it is there's a beautiful undertone to it, and it's one of hope. Don't ever give up. Don't give up hope. It's like the movie Castaway with Tom Hanks. One day, a part of a porta potty blew in, and that was his escape from his prison. You don't know what the tide will bring, so don't give up. Thanks again, Joe. I mean, I had butterflies when we started, but
Me too.
I'm really good. Thanks. This is a wonderful evening, and I hope everybody took something from it.
Yeah, I thank you everybody in the chat room. I know I missed a couple of questions, but you guys, I appreciate it all. And Michael, we'll talk soon. Cindy, where is she?
Good night, Cindy.
Good night, Cindy. Thanks for watching. Talk to you soon.
All right, Joe. We will later.
All right. Have a
Bye.
good night. All right, guys. Thanks again. And we'll do it again. We'll do more interviews in the near future. This one was not the normal subject I cover, but it's something I would do again. This story was too important, too amazing to me to just leave it alone. I had to do this. So we will talk again soon. And everybody have a good night and see you next time.